Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and I hope you had an amazing reading year with plenty of great sci-fi and no fantasy. So in this video, I am going to be ranking every single book that I read in 2025, starting with Red Mars. I am going to put this in decent. I thought this had some interesting science. I thought it had an interesting premise. I liked the colonization on Mars, but it just sort of delved a little bit too much into the character drama, the relationships, and things that I was less interested in, and I found this book a little bit dry and wasn't really compelled to complete the whole series. But I think Robinson has some potential. He's an author that I will try again. All right, up next we had When Gravity Fails. I'm going to put this in very good. George Alec Effinger. This is the first book I've read by him, and this is great cyberpunk, Middle Eastern-inspired cyberpunk, and yeah, cool crime detective story. All of the kind of tropes that you want in your cyberpunk, but with a few original ideas, and I think executed very well. Then we had Titan by John Varley. I'm going to put this in decent as well. I like the big dumb object subgenre, and I think there is some cool, trippy stuff going on in Titan, but some odd sexual passages that didn't really add a lot to the book for me. It got a little bit too weird, a little bit too fantasy, not my kind of sci-fi, but I'm glad I read it. There was some interesting stuff in there. Then, also in the big dumb object subgenre, Ringworld by Larry Niven. I'm going to put this in good. This had some high points, but I also had some issues with it. The ideas are awesome, some very interesting things going on here, cool science, cool aliens, but a little bit dry, and I don't really love Niven's writing style. I don't really like the way he approaches characters. So, strong elements and some not so strong elements. All right, wrapping up my PKD project that I was doing earlier in the year, I read Radio Free Albemuth and VALIS. And these are kind of two takes on the same book, and I like them both. I'm going to say Radio Free Albemuth. I'm going to say good, and then I'm going to say VALIS very good. They're pretty close, but I think I preferred VALIS, one of the last books PKD ever wrote, and I think in order to fully appreciate it, I think you need to know a bit about PKD, have read some of his works, because there's some interesting kind of semi-autobiographical things that he works in there, and yeah, it's kind of trippy and emotional and confusing and insightful, and it just kind of makes you feel all of this weird and wonderful stuff as PKD tends to make you feel. All right, after that we had The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, kind of post-apocalyptic zombie. So a little bit of sci-fi stuff in there as well. I'm going to put this in good. I think there were things I really connected to. There were things that I found interesting. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, there were a few writing quirks. I had some issues with the prose, and I felt like the ending was kind of ambitious, something a little bit different maybe for a zombie book, but it didn't blow me away. But it was something that I was glad that I had read when I finished it. And I want to read more from Carey. I think he has a book, something like Infinity Gate, which is more of a space opera, and I've heard good things about that one. All right, after that we have High Rise by J.G. Ballard. Not for me. I didn't like this book. It has an interesting premise. We have kind of a dystopian future, people living in towers in the future, and they're kind of segregated by class in a way. Very interesting. I like this premise. And he's a strong writer. I think the prose was quite impressive. Obviously has a strong command over the English language, but the plot did not really develop in a satisfying way for me. Thematically, I didn't really get anything out of the book that I didn't get out of the first few chapters. And a lot of things just felt forced. There were things like animal cruelty, which were just unpleasant to read, and they kind of felt wedged in there to try and elicit negative emotions, but they didn't really feel connected to or rewarding in terms of, you know, organically coming from the plot. Yeah, it's just a bit edgy. Ballard is an edgy guy. I'm not really sure he's an author for me. Let me know if you think I should try something else by Ballard. All right, moving on to Borne by Jeff Vandermeer. I thought this might be very good. I ended up putting it in good just because it lost me a little bit towards the end, but a really interesting creature. not going to say too much about this book, but we're in this kind of weird world, weird future where there's kind of like biological things going on. So some interesting chemistry, kind of mysteries of like, how did we get here, and what is this? What is this creature out here in the woods? And very colorful prose. It's creative. It's inventive. And there were moments where I felt really connected, and then it just lost me a little bit towards the end. But I like this. I think if you like Annihilation, or if Annihilation was slightly too weird for you, this is just half a notch more accessible than Annihilation. All right, getting back to some cyberpunk with Web of Angels by John M. Ford, kind of proto-cyberpunk in a way. This is pretty early cyberpunk. I'm going to put this in good. This is one of the most confusing books I've read this year. I like the opening and I like the ending, but man, in the middle, I did not really know what was going on. You just kind of have to, you're just gonna have to hang on and enjoy the ride. It's trippy, it's hazy, it's very ambitious. I'm very impressed because I think this was written in 1980, and sort of how sort of far ahead of the game it was in terms of various technological, computing, virtual things. Yeah, this is a work of art. Don't know how much I enjoyed it. I don't know how much I enjoyed that chunk in the middle, but I am impressed by this novel. All right, then we have The Windup Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. I'm going to put this in good as well. I remember this this stretch kind of early in the year where like everything was like pretty good, but not blowing me away. So we have kind of a cyberpunky, there's a word I'm looking for. Biopunk, is that the word? Anyway, things in the future, they're not great. Resources are limited, but there are certain interesting technologies, and we have a character that is engineered, and she's kind of embroiled in this kind of like political turmoil and stuff that's going on. There's a lot of great elements going on in The Wind-Up Girl. I'm not sure if they all came together in the most satisfying way for me, but I liked it enough where I would definitely try something else by this author. All right, moving on to an author that I am familiar with, Adrian Tchaikovsky, Service Model. I'm putting in decent. This is my least favorite Tchaikovsky that I've read so far, although it wasn't bad. It just felt the first chapter is awesome. The first chapter really hooks you in. You're like, okay, what's going to go on with this robot? What's it saying about robotics, artificial intelligence? We got a bit of a crime mystery. What's going on in this world? And it just sort of played out in very predictable ways. I felt like it didn't really examine any new material or themes within that subgenre. I don't know. Tchaikovsky, I think his highs are highs. Children of Time, amazing. Dogs of War, really like that too. But is he writing too many books? Just write one great book a year instead of 4 good books a year. I know it doesn't really work like that, but that would be my choice if I was master of the universe. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Very good. I didn't like it quite as much as Clara and the Sun, but I just love his writing style. The whole time you're reading an Ishiguro book, it's beautiful, yet sad. You're emotionally kind of hopeful, but also filled with a sense of dread. Like everything's just uneasy and you feel like it's all going to go horribly wrong and you just don't know quite when or how. And not super sci-fi, but some interesting elements. I do like the things that kind of unravel as we go throughout the book. And he's a great character writer as well. I wish he wrote more sci-fi, because I would definitely read a lot of Ishiguro books if they were all sci-fi. All right, moving on to Octavia E. Butler, Parable of the Sower. I like this one quite a lot. Slightly less than Dawn. I'm going to put it in good. It was almost very good for me. It's post-apocalyptic. There's some interesting things to do with a character that has, I'm forgetting the term for it now, but like basically an extreme form of empathy where she experiences other people's pain. And there were some great moments in the book because of that, but I didn't feel like that particular concept was as fully explored as I maybe hoped it would be. But I'm just sort of like a concept-driven reader, you know. Butler, she's a great writer, sort of like simple to read, but tough to process. I need to read more of Butler, I want to immerse myself in that style, because there's something there that I really like. Even if this one wasn't the biggest hit for me, I did prefer Dawn from Xenogenesis. But I will be reading more from Butler, including Kindred in 2026. All right, up next we have Blindness by Jose Saramago. Very interesting, high concept premise. One day people start going blind and it's contagious. People around town, they start getting this white blindness. How would society function if all of a sudden all of these people are going blind? And this really hit hard. This is kind of an emotional read, quite a tough read. Saramago, I believe, won the Nobel Prize. I was reading a translation, but to me, it felt like the prose was Nobel Prize worthy. I felt highly impacted by Blindness. I think there's a sequel, but it's not like a direct sequel. It's not like the first book ends on a cliffhanger. But if you like this one, there is more to read in that world. Okay, Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed. I'm going to put this in decent. I read The Lathe of Heaven, I think, at the end of 2024, and I love that. The Lathe of Heaven is my favorite Le Guin book so far. The Dispossessed, however, just a little bit dry, very academic. The premise, if I told you the premise and you imagined what the book would be, that kind of is what the book is. And that, to me, is a disappointment because you want there to be more surprises, plot twists, reveals, interesting concepts, and it kind of just focuses on this society's capitalist, anarchist, and just to like explores what they were like. And it's, if I was looking for an essay, it might it might scratch the itch. But I'm a sci-fi guy. Look, I'm pretty much always in a sci-fi mood, and it didn't scratch the sci-fi itch for me. Let me know what other Le Guin books I should read after Left Hand, Lathe, and Dispossessed, if Lathe was my favorite. Okay, Arkady and Boris Strugatsky with Hard to Be a God. I'm going to put this in good. I didn't like this as much as Roadside Picnic, but I did like it. It puts you in what kind of feels like a medieval world, but there's sort of like a sci-fi connection. And I did like the way that it used that to explore certain themes. And I think it's very clever writing because the Strugatsky's were doing some interesting things to avoid censorship when this book was written and published. And so another book that I sort of respect a lot, but I didn't get the most out of it. But I think I need to read more from Strugatsky's because they have a unique style. I did like Roadside Picnic a lot. I want to see what else they can do in kind of more overtly science fiction books. That brings us to Timelike Infinity by Stephen Baxter. The first book that I'm putting in amazing. I love this book. I love Baxter. It's hard sci-fi. Yeah, he hits you with info dumps and exposition, but man, the ideas are just so cool. The scale and scope. Oh, yeah, this book will have you questioning everything, and it's done in quite like a tight package. I think it's under 300 pages, a cool space opera story with just these massive sci-fi concepts. I really love this stuff. I'm all about Baxter. I need to read more from... I've only read 2 Zealey books, but I will be reading more from the Zealey sequence in 2026. 36 Streets by T.R. Napa. Very good. Borderline amazing. I really enjoyed this fairly recent cyberpunk release. It's got all the kind of cool virtual reality, drugs, crime, martial arts. It's set in Vietnam. Just a really cool vibe. Hits all the cyberpunk notes that you want it to, but tackles some interesting themes to do with memory, identity, family. There's a whole lot of good stuff in here. I will definitely be reading more from Napa, including The Escher Man, rather soon. All right, here's a classic, Planet of the Apes by Pierre Boulle. Amazing. This was one of the surprises of the year, just because I thought I knew about Planet of the Apes through pop culture, the movies and whatnot, but I'd never read the original, and man, what a masterpiece. It's split into 3 parts. The first part is kind of like a fun space adventure, kind of has this classic feel to it. And then the first kind of explores the second part explores some interesting social themes with the humans and the apes. And then the third part, when you get to some of the reveals of the mysteries, it's just awesome. And it really sticks the landing. The ending is perfect. Slightly different from the movies. If you haven't read the book, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's definitely worth a read. I loved Planet of the Apes. Then we had The Diamond Age by Neil Stevenson. I really enjoyed Snow Crash. Diamond Age was good. It was much more complex than I was expecting it to be. I did know that Snow Crash was a bit of an outlier for him. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit satirical. Diamond Age, much more serious. But I did not expect this to be so dense. I thought there were some really interesting ideas, but there were pretty long stretches where I was struggling to follow, okay, exactly Where are we going with the plot? How are all these things connected? Very impressive in terms of the technology and some interesting themes, but just I spent a little bit too much time being like, huh? What? Uh, maybe I need to build up those Stevenson muscles by reading more Stevenson, and it'll start to click for me a bit more next time. Okay, Aurora Rising by Alistair Reynolds, one of my favorite writers. And he didn't disappoint. This is part of the Revelation Space universe, but is the first in a sub-series, the Prefect Dreyfus Emergencies. And it combines detective sci-fi with a space opera. Man, the ideas are cool. There's just so many times throughout this book, I was just thinking like, yeah, this is the good stuff. I don't know how Reynolds does it. He has just such a creative and imaginative brain to me. I love the way his sci-fi mind works. I will definitely be reading more from Reynolds. Elysium Fire, the next book in the Prefect Dreyfus Emergencies, is high priority on the DBR. All right, going back to, I read a lot of cyberpunk this year. This was kind of a year of cyberpunk for me. Pat Cadigan's Synners. I'm going to put this in very good. It's a little surreal. It's a little trippy. It's maybe a little less focused on the tech and a little bit more thematically influenced and just kind of driven by the vibes and the experience. And this is one where, yeah, I did kind of find it confusing, but it was sort of a fun confusing. I liked kind of just swimming around in the murkiness, trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle, understand the language. Cadigan, a unique and talented writer. And we had James Blish, A Case of Conscience. I'm going to put it in decent. This was a tale of two halves for me. This was originally a novella and it was expanded into a novel. And the first half I felt was pretty strong. I thought it had some interesting themes. It was a first contact story, some religious ideas, philosophy. But then the second half felt a little tacked on. It felt a little forced. I didn't really connect with the ideas as much. Didn't really stick the landing for me. So I think if I had just read the Hugo winning novella, it would have been quite a bit higher. But the novel, mixed on. I was mixed on it. Okay, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Another one of the big surprises of the year. Amazing. Okay, so this is a post-apocalyptic story. It's literary sci-fi, not necessarily what I would typically consider to be my thing. But man, just the entire time I was reading this book, I felt overwhelmed. It's hard to kind of put into words what the reading experience was like other than just emotions. This book just made me feel things. When I finished it, I just wanted to lie down. And I don't even know if I wanted to process what I had just felt, but just to just lie there and experience. Just turn my brain off and just feel this book. Mandel, what a writer. Hit me in the heart. All right, Bruce Sterling's Schismatrix. I want to say Schismatrix, but the intro to the book, he tells you that's not how to pronounce it. It's Schismatrix. Good. Very inventive cyberpunk here. Some kind of really interesting dynamics between factions, different philosophies on technology. Some cool tech in here. I just sort of needed a bit of a through line to kind of get me to that ending where I was more invested in the outcome. But it was a good book. If you're doing your cyberpunk history, this is another one that you need to check off. Okay, The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor. Very good. This book will make you think differently about octopuses. So it's set in the future, and there's some great stuff here to do with intelligence and consciousness and comparing humans versus robots versus animals versus aliens, like all kinds of beings, and the way in which intelligence and consciousness can be the same or different. And yeah, had some hard sci-fi in there, as well as some thematically rich stuff. I was a big fan of The Mountain in the Sea, and I will definitely be reading Where the Axe is Buried, his most recent novel, very soon. Titanium Noir. Guys. The first DNF, the first time I DNF'd a book in the last 10 years was Titanium Noir. Okay. The plot makes no sense. Almost no sentence flows on from the previous one. Everything is a non sequitur. The logic of anything that the characters say never makes sense. The jokes don't make sense. there are such silly things. Like there are titans in this world that are like 8 feet tall and they're genetically modified. And the book starts with the murder of one, which is pretty rare. And the detective interviews a neighbor, and the guy's like, "Oh, he was a titan. I just thought he was really tall." Really tall? He's 8 foot tall, and you live in a world where titans exist, and you didn't think, yeah, that's probably one of the genetically modified titans. Very silly. Very, very silly book. I think this is supposed to be a bit of a satire. It's kind of like Raymond Chandler meets cyberpunk, and it's tongue in cheek, but I didn't get it. The jokes did not work for me. This was, I don't know. I mean, I get, it was a big swing, I guess. And if it's a hit for you, I want it to be a hit for you. If you pay the money and spend the time to read a book, I hope it's a hit. But this was the miss of 2025 for Jonathan. All right, The Gone World, Tom Swederlich. Time travel, crime, detective stuff. Good. It started out higher for me because I was really invested in the mystery, the characters. I love some timey-wimey time travel stuff. But I don't know, I felt like we got a little bit bogged down, and then kind of the big ending, I was like, this feels like something that should blow my mind, and yet I'm just closing that final page and being like, okay, I'm glad I got to the end. Interesting. I liked it, didn't love it, but there's some big stuff in there, so it might be a bigger hit for you. Software by Rudy Rucker. Very good. This is underrated cyberpunk. It's clever, it's kind of funny. We have these unlikable characters, but the dialogue is very entertaining, and some interesting things to do with taping one's brain, putting yourself into artificial machinery, and what that means for you, what that means for the future of humanity. Juggle some big ideas while being kind of silly and irreverent at times. Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I like Blake Crouch, but this was probably the least favorite of the 3 that I've read. I'm putting this in good. Yeah, it just didn't quite live up to Dark Matter and Recursion. I felt like the premise was great, but the plot didn't play out in as ways that were as unexpected or satisfying. It felt just a little too simple, too easy at times. But not bad. I mean, if you're looking for a techno thriller, yeah, it's going to hit that techno thriller mark. Okay, another surprise from me, Hardwired. Amazing. This book is so cool. And I thought from the various covers that it has, it was going to be a little bit cheesy. But it's not cheesy. It's really well thought out. It's a cyberpunk book, but it also includes a bit of a Western vibe, as well as there's flying involved. The technology, the weapons are awesome. The characters are great. It balances this great relationship between the 2 main characters that is not corny. It's genuinely interesting. You care about the journey that they go on, and oh, there's a dastardly villain. There's a great villain that I loved to hate in this one. Yeah. Hardwired, underrated. Give Hardwired a try. A little confusing at times, but not too bad. It all comes together. All right, then we had Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Very good. I like Station 11 slightly more, but Sea of Tranquility, still great. This is a time travel story. We get different periods. It's a little bit Cloud Atlas-esque, but Cloud Atlas is more thematically tied together, whereas Sea of Tranquility, the threads are actually more directly connected. And man, just sometimes that you'll read a Mandel passage and you're just like, wow, like what an observation, and what a way to frame it in a way that is meaningful and you can connect with. Just a special talent with the pen, Emily St. John Mandel. Okay, moving on, we have Quarantine by Greg Egan. Very good. I like Permutation City more, but I like Quarantine more than Diaspora. So I'd rank it second out of the 3 Egan books I've read. Interesting premise. It's got kind of like a cyberpunky vibe, but there's quantum technology, and unfortunately it gets like a little bogged down in the middle. It gets a little dry. There's kind of like a crime case that just sort of gets slowed by people thinking and talking. But when it gets to the big moments, the hard sci-fi stuff, the reveals, the ideas, it's just like, This is mind-blowing stuff. Egan, if you like hard sci-fi, the kind of stuff that's going to melt your brain, there's no better brain melters out there than Greg Egan. All right, after that, we had a reread, my only reread of the year, because I did do my top 10 cyberpunk books, and I thought, I can't do a top 10 cyberpunk list without rereading Neuromancer. I liked it more on the reread. The first time I read it, it was fairly early on in my sci-fi reading career, and I thought it was interesting, but man, whew, it does not hold your hand. I hear it recommended for sci-fi beginners just because it's one of the classic cyberpunk works, one of the most influential books in the genre. And that's true, but I don't know if that makes it right for beginners, because I liked it, I respected it, but I think I needed a little bit more cyberpunk under my belt to make as much sense of it as I was able to the second time around. And the biggest thing that I noticed, the difference that I noticed, was the prose. Gibson is just such a writer. The experience of Neuromancer is a particular vibe that is pretty much unmatched in science fiction and fiction in general. So just dive in, man. Don't try to understand everything, especially if it's the first time around. Just enjoy the kind of jazzy, free-flowing, psychedelic prose, man. That's what you're there to enjoy, and then let the pieces fall into place over time. Okay, after that, a much easier book to read, Stephen King. He writes very readable books. The Long Walk, I'm going to put that in very good. It's a great setup. We have these characters, these teenagers on a walk. Keep walking. If you stop walking, you get shot. It's a nightmare of a reality contest, and the relationships that form, the character dynamics, the dialogue is all great. And King, he's a thriller master. Just keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire book. Film's pretty good too. It was a pretty faithful, well done adaptation. Slightly preferred the book, but I was a fan of both. Here we have one I was pretty mixed on. It's hard to rank this one. I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I'm going to put this in decent, but hear me out. There's high points. I think he's a great writer. There were a number of times where I stopped and just reread a passage and thought, wow, like what a sentence. Just Matheson has a way with words, and that makes me want to read more from him. The reason why it's only indecent, though, is because there were some pretty large issues I had with it. One was it contains one of my least favorite tropes of all time in any media, and that is when a female character is being quote-unquote hysterical, and a male character will slap them to bring them out of this hysteria, and this will inevitably lead to some sexual tension between the two. I hate it. It's dumb. It's bad writing. Men, don't do this. That really annoyed me. And there were some things that I thought, you're trying to pitch this character as being smart to me, but he does some pretty dumb things. And the themes were so interesting. There's some such great ideas here, but I felt like Matheson didn't go far enough. I wanted this book to be way darker than it was. And I'm not really like a dark reader. I don't intentionally seek out the darkest stuff. But I feel like for this particular topic to work, these themes to work, I needed it to go farther. And maybe further. There we go. Good catch, Jonathan. The old further father police ain't gonna get me. It needed to go further. And I think maybe because this book was written in the 50s, it couldn't have sort of maybe gone to as dark a place as I think it needed to. So maybe it's not Matheson's fault. But I felt like this book was unfulfilled potential. But the potential is there, and that's why I'm going to read more from Matheson. Okay, so this was during October. I was doing a couple of spooky reads, some horror sci-fi reads. Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Putting this in decent as well. I really liked the opening. I thought it had a good mystery, a good creepy vibe, but it never developed into anything truly scary, and we kind of get sidetracked by some relationship stuff that I wasn't that interested in, and then by the time we get some reveals at the end, I was just like, okay, that was fine. Glad I read it for Halloween, but not one of my favorite sci-fi books of the year. Following that up, we had Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers. Another one, sort of like high highs, low lows. I'm going to put this in decent as well. Great setup. I like the dialogue, interesting dynamics between the characters. But after the first 50 to 100 pages, it just kind of felt like it wasn't giving me anything new. I just wanted more out of the book. I think I might like the movies, though, because if it could capture the vibe, and add in some of that body horror and creepiness. I think there's some good stuff there. So I don't know. Let me know if you've seen the movies. I'm interested, but it's not necessarily a high priority. Let me know if I should check them out. Okay, The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This is kind of hard to rate. I'm rating everything based on my own personal experience. Obviously, this is a classic of huge historical importance. I'm going to put it in good because I think at the time it came out, this would have blown people's minds. And I think it's so cool how influential it was, how ahead of its time it was. But reading it now, it just kind of feels like, okay, it's a little simple, it's a little quaint, and maybe some people will like that vibe. I enjoyed it. It's clever. It was a good, enjoyable read, but it just didn't blow me away like some of my favorite reads of the year did. But I liked it. I put it slightly above Time Machine, although they're both pretty good. Okay, then moving on to Sun Eater. To prepare for Shadows Upon Time, I had obviously read all the novels, but I hadn't read all of the novellas. I read Queen Amid Ashes. Very good. I like this quite a lot. We get some good character dynamics, some interesting themes on this little kind of side mission for Hadrian, but it kind of connects into some other things a little bit in the future. I also wanted to read The Dregs of Empire, but then I found out it's 320 pages long, and that's not really a novella. That's a novel, and I did not really have time to fit that in before the release of Shadows Upon Time. So that was my bad. That was a scheduling error on my part. I'll probably read that soon. Maybe do it on audio or something. So I've heard that one's pretty good. I know Sun Eater fans like that one. Queen Amid Ashes, I liked it. Shadows Upon Time. I did a full review for this. I'm going to put it in very good. I am a little bit disappointed, but that's okay. Most of the Sun Eater books have been amazing. This one, I thought had some high points, and it did some things really well. And I don't think it's a bad ending. It was just the Sun Eater book that I had the most issues with. There were just a few things where it started to go a bit of a direction. It's like, this is not really what I personally love about Sun Eater. But I've seen people say this is their favorite Sun Eater book. So I think it just sort of depends on your own personal reading preferences. Okay, getting into our last few books of the year, Moderan. Oh, boy, did I get burned by Moderan. I made a post, so I'm going to put this in decent. I made a post on Discord. Join us on Discord, by the way, if you want to talk about these books or any other sci-fi books. About one chapter in, I knew what a good writer David R. Bunch was. I used that flaming pen writing GIF meme thing. I was just like, oh, this writing is fire. Because sometimes you pick up a book and you just know somebody's a good writer instantly. I was like, Bunch. Wow, what a master of the language. Unfortunately, though, this really creative language, this kind of future world that Bunch created, it just started to grow a little bit tiresome. Every chapter felt the same. So this is a series of short stories that are all kind of interconnected. They kind of progress into sort of a novel. They kind of complete one complete timeline. I felt like the first couple were just amazing. But then the tone and the themes were pretty similar throughout, and they're pretty short. They're only about 7 pages each. So by the time you've read like 40 stories that all feel similarly, it starts to drag a bit. It has less impact. I don't know. Maybe instead of just reading this like a novel, it would have been better to pick at it like a short story collection and just kind of make my way through it over time. Then I think I would have enjoyed it more. I don't know. Let me know. It's a unique book. Let me know your experience with Moderan if you've read it. Okay, 2 to go. That brings us to Time and Again by Clifford D. Simak. I loved Waystation. I liked City. What did I think of Time and Again? It was my favorite. Oh my goodness. This is one of the best time travel stories ever. And it is a good time travel story, but it's not even necessarily the timey-wimey stuff that got me with this book. It's the ideas, the concepts, the themes. Simak is able to write kind of cool ideas, cool things for the characters to explore in a way that just connects emotionally with the reader. This book really resonated with me. Such interesting ideas to do with humanity and destiny and what just like a fun world to play in what this was. And so many ideas in a relatively short book. And he nailed the landing. Like, I love Waystation and I think it deserves all the props, but This might be his best book, time and again. It might need some more love. Check out Simak. Check out Time and Again. Man, that was good. And then finally, Calculating God by Robert J. Sawyer. I'm going to put this in very good. This was borderline amazing as well. I really liked the First Contact story. It's quite simple and it gets into it right away. To me, it felt a little bit like Contact meets Project Hail Mary. Not quite as jokey as that, but there's some amusing dialogue here and there. And it's not very plot driven. It's just characters, aliens, trying to kind of rectify or, science and religion. To what extent are they, opposing, or are they actually the same? Because we have these aliens or these alien planets where extinction events or near mass extinction events have happened at similar points to the time on which they happened on Earth. It's like, okay, what's the connection? Is there like a scientific thing, or is there maybe, an intelligent designer that is responsible for these corresponding events? And yeah, the ideas are great, really thinky, perhaps needed a bit more plot progression. But I don't know, the ideas were just so interesting. I didn't mind just kind of sitting in there and experiencing that and enjoying these characters and their discussions. Yeah, if you like sciencey stuff, I was going to say a bit of a techno thriller, but no, it's just not really thrilling enough to be called a techno thriller. But it's got the techno. It's got some great science in there, which I really enjoyed. I'll have to check out something else from Sawyer. I think Hominids might be his other most well-known novel. So there you go. A pretty great reading year. I am happy with what I read this year. A lot of good stuff, a lot of very good stuff, and the amazing books. My top 6 books of the year: Timelike Infinity, Planet of the Apes, Aurora Rising, Station 11, Hardwired, Neuromancer, and Time and Again. So there you go. That's what I read this year. Let me know in the comments what you thought about any of these, and if any of them sounded interesting. If you're going to pick them up, maybe read them in 2026, and what your favorite books of the year were. So just quickly before we go, let's find out what I'm going to be kicking off January with our patron pick of the month for January over at the Quantum Wheel. Welcome to the Quantum Wheel, where all of the patron picks are both simultaneously picked and not picked until we observe a winner. Let's find out how I'll be kicking off 2026 with our patron pick of the month for January. Spin, Quantum Wheel, spin. I got a good feeling. It's going to be something fun. We're going to enjoy some good sci-fi next year, and it looks like it might be the Dreaming Jewels, or, yes, the Dreaming Jewels. It hangs on Theodore Sturgeon. I've only read one of his books, More Than Human, but I loved it. So I'm looking forward to the Dreaming Jewels. It sounds like it's sci-fi with maybe a little horror, a little fantasy. It sounds a little creepy. I think we're at a carnival. It's maybe a kid with some powers or something. I don't know. I'm intrigued. Let me know if you want. If this sounds interesting to you, join me. I'm going to read this in January. And let's do the outro from the wheel. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you had a great reading year, and I hope next year is even better. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can vote on the Quantum Wheel as one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, including Nima, A New Eden, Half-Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, Colin, and the amazing Bamsis. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.